All right. So welcome everybody. So we'll begin we're at our second to the last session. So we'll begin by sitting for a few minutes as we usually do in the beginning, just going back to that breath awareness meditation that we've been working on every week. And by now you may have experimented a little bit with where in the body it's helpful to keep your focus, and also what obstacles you might have. We've been talking about the different obstacles to our meditation. We'll review that a little bit tonight, but whether your obstacle is more of the distraction side, lots of thoughts, or maybe a little bit more on the dullness side, and sometimes it depends on the time of day. So we'll review those, but remembering the antidotes to those obstacles as we practice. So we'll practice for a few minutes, set our motivation for our session tonight, do a little check-in in the chat, and then talk about a couple of other topics that I wanted to cover tonight about how to set up a practice, and then we'll do another guided meditation. So if you just get in your comfortable yet alert meditation posture, remembering those 7 points, your back straight, your shoulders even, your hands can either be in that traditional posture, your right hand on top of your left and your thumbs touching, your elbows out a little bit, or your hands can be resting on your thighs. That's also fine. Traditionally, we sit in a cross-legged posture on a cushion, but you might be sitting up in a chair and just making sure you have your feet stable on the floor. Your eyes with that hooded gaze, gazing downward, but not really looking at what's in your field of vision. And then your tongue on the roof of your mouth, right behind your teeth, on your upper palate. That keeps you from having to swallow constantly. Your chin tucked in a little bit. And so after settling into that posture, let's just take a moment to do a body sweep. This is always helpful to do in the beginning to make sure that you're completely relaxed. So starting at the crown of the head and sweeping down, relaxing through your neck and shoulders, your jaw, breathing through the nose if we can, keeping our mouth shut, but our jaw not clenched or tight. And then from the shoulders, drawing your attention down through your body, your torso, relax the belly, relax the buttocks, relaxing all the way down to the feet. And then rounding off this initial settling of the body with 3 deep breaths, deep inhalation, deep exhalation. This activates the soothing system, helps us relax into the practice. And then after those 3 deep breaths, we'll just turn our attention to the ordinary respiration, the ordinary sensations that accompany the breath in the body, wherever you can feel them the most easily. It might be the full body awareness of breathing, or perhaps you find it helpful to localize the attention at the diaphragm, or maybe the chest rising and falling, or maybe the nostrils. So wherever in the body it's easiest to attend. And just keeping your attention there. When your attention wanders, gets carried away by a thought or a sound or another sense object, just releasing the distraction and returning to the breath. Just releasing any distraction, returning to the breath. And then let's take a moment to set our motivation for our session together tonight. So thinking of what brought you here, you can think in a general way, what brought you to the class in general, and if there's a specific intention. Sometimes during the course of a class, our motivation might have changed. You might have learned something about meditation that might have refined or transformed your motivation from your initial one for taking this class. Just take a moment to reflect on what's true for you in terms of what you'd like to get out of our time together tonight. And then we also try to set an altruistic intention in addition to whatever our individual personal motivation and intention. We always try and keep in mind that by doing spiritual practice, by learning new techniques, learning how to deal with the difficulties that come up during our practice, that it benefits not just us, but enables us to bring benefit to all living beings. So just take a moment to generate that altruistic intention as well for our time together tonight. Okay. So what we'll do before we begin is just use the chat to check in. If you want to just open the chat window and write in where you're calling in from and just a couple of words about how you're doing, anything you'd like to share, just as a way of kind of welcoming everybody into this space. Redwood City, feeling great and clear-headed. Just trying to keep my eyes at that half mast. That is challenging. Marina, doing okay. Feeling peaceful in Santa Cruz. SAC, nice and calm today. SoCal, gratitude about so many teachers. Los Angeles, grateful as always for this class. Los Gatos, grateful for the clouds and breeze today. Brentwood, great. Frazzled, tired of technology breakdowns. Yikes, yes. Santa Cruz, chill. Santa Cruz Mountains, peaceful. Big Sur above. San Jose, feeling calm. Feeling grateful from Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz, glad to go to LNB to pick up my grandson at Tara School. Refreshing, happy Wednesday. Signing in from Los Angeles. great weather, breeze, west side Santa Cruz. Missed several days, but the days I did went much better. Richmond, California, Little Tibet. Great. Thank you all for checking in. So what we'll do before we start with a little bit of new material. Oh, Capitola. Somebody's checking in from Capitola. We'll review a little bit what we talked about last time, because we'd finished the obstacles and the antidotes. And so that last obstacle that we had was what we called laziness, which is, maybe the first Tibetan word that you've learned. Anybody remember what the word for laziness is? Sounds like what it is. Lay low. So it's easy to remember. And the definition of laziness is just not feeling like getting on your meditation cushion in the first place, right? You're not able to have the obstacles of distraction or dullness if you're not even meditating in the first place. So let's just, I'm going to share my screen for a second. Let's just review those antidotes. So we say for laziness, that it's 4 steps. And the first is gaining confidence or faith in doing practice through understanding the benefits. And we say the benefits are physical health and pliancy. Pliancy means something like flexibility, mental pliancy, and that's kind of an ability to bounce back. You're not so thrown off when things happen. Creative thinking, that's a really interesting one that happens as a side effect of meditation. Sometimes you'll be presented with some situation that seems like a dichotomy, and it seems like you have to choose one of 2 extreme choices, but you can think of some kind of middle way, right? And get creative in your problem solving. It increases your ability to concentrate no matter what you're doing, even off the meditation cushion. If you develop the ability to focus and concentrate on the cushion, then it just improves it in all areas of your life. And then also from a Buddhist perspective, we say that we need that meditation, that concentration developed in order to get those deep insights and really transform our minds. And that's kind of the main point from a Buddhist perspective of meditation. And then having meditated or understood the benefits, it results in an aspiration to practice. So then we have this aspiration. We think, oh, I really want that. Wow, I want that creative thinking and that mental and physical pliancy and the ability to concentrate, especially I want those realizations on the path. So we're inspired through understanding the benefits, and then we're willing to work hard, because in the beginning we don't see results for a while. It's not a short-term project, and so we need to have this kind of effort that we put in. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I think of it in terms of exercise. I was talking to a friend the other day about exercise, and during the shutdown I've gotten a lot better at exercise and taking a daily walk. And I was going, well, I'm usually not like, oh yeah, let's hike up the hill. Won't that be super fun? But after having done it for a while, I realize how much better I feel after I do it, right? So it's like understanding the benefits. And then I have the aspiration to do it. I'm willing to put the energy in. And then I do start to see the results, which then keeps that cycle going. And it actually makes it even more fun because I know that there's like feedback. So it's kind of one of those feedback loops. But in the beginning, we just need some kind of confidence through understanding the benefits. And I think, if you think of any time that you've tried to engage in an exercise program, it's kind of like that. It doesn't become fun until after a little while of doing it. And then you really do see the benefits, and then you're willing to, it's not so much of a hardship to actually, get out and do it. So those were the antidotes to just not feeling like meditating in the first place. And then we looked at this chart, and this is from your handout, your PDF that you got, when you registered for the class, the chart of the 5 faults and 8 antidotes. And that's just all of them in one kind of handy chart to review. So laziness, we just went through those. Losing the object of meditation, forgetting the advice is what it's called in the scripture. But what it means is basically distraction off of the object, either through, thinking about something else or the dullness. And so the mindfulness that keeps the mind on the object is the antidote to that. Laxity, or we've been calling dullness or sleepiness, and excitement or distraction. And then introspection, and that's that quality of mind that we were looking at developing through the labeling, like noticing when we're off. So we say mindfulness and introspection are 2 qualities of mind that we're looking to develop. Mindfulness is the aspect of mind that keeps the mind on the object. And then introspection is the quality of mind that notices when you're off the object, right? And I think in the beginning, like I've said, it's easy for us to be off the object and not even realize it. We're just spaced out for 5 minutes. And then we're like, oh no, I'm off the object, and then come back. So this is a quality of mind that we also train, noticing quickly when we're off the object. And that's called introspection. And then the antidotes that we talked about for distraction. First of all, for distraction, we say external antidotes like adjusting the posture, maybe dimming the lights in the room a little bit. The room might be too bright. So after that, loosening up the focus slightly, thinking of a sobering topic briefly, and then returning to the breath for a few minutes. And then for dullness, kind of 180 degrees different. We might need the room a little bit brighter. We might need to sit up straighter, tip our head back a little bit if we're falling asleep. Sometimes it means that our chin is too far down. And then tightening up the focus. Maybe we need to lift up our mind by thinking of an inspiring subject, maybe thinking of the opportunity we have, thinking of an inspiring spiritual teacher, for example, or a role model. And then if that doesn't work, briefly getting up, walking around, getting fresh air, splashing your face with water if you really just keep nodding off on the cushion. And then the last fault is over application, and that means applying one of these antidotes when you don't have to. Your meditation is going really well, but you're second guessing how good your meditation is going, and you apply one of these antidotes. So the antidote for over application is just leave it alone. So it's very exact, this list, and this is a chart that'll kind of give you the review of all that we've been talking about so far. So before we start talking about how to set up a daily practice, I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute and see if there's any questions about all of these obstacles and antidotes that we've been reviewing. And you can either just unmute yourself or type into the chat. Patrick's going to keep an eye on the chat. So anything to clarify?
I have a question. Hi, my name is Heather. I've never spoken. So I am having a problem with what we talked about last time with that blissed out meditative state. I think it's because I also do a lot of yoga. Like I already did yoga nidra today, and I'm kind of like, on one hand, I'm trying to attain that blissed out state in shavasana, and then I come to meditation and I can get to that blissed out state really quickly, and it feels really good. And then I keep trying to remember, like, that is bad, not bad, but that's not meditating. And then I try to bring myself back to the breath. So I guess, could you speak a little more to that? I'm really not sure how to shift myself, even though I'm applying all those things and the labeling.
Yeah, and it might be, I mean, I didn't mean to indicate that it feeling good is a problem per se, but sometimes that blissful is a little bit buzzed out, like slightly spaced out without the intensity. So remember when we were talking about that, we said there's 3 qualities. There's staying on the object, there's the clarity of mind, And then there's this real engagement. And sometimes with that blissed out, kind of buzzed out, there's not that intensity of engagement. It's just a little bit slack.
Okay. I
That's,
can feel what you're talking about. I know I can feel what you're talking about. And I think that's the learning edge for me,
yeah,
is that slack piece of feeling
that,
like, yeah,
and
okay.
then, and what might help then is, you know, amping up the intensity. I mean, it might help to think of the antidotes both to the laziness, because in a way it's a little bit of laziness and
Yeah.
going, oh, this isn't really developing my mind. It's a little too slack. And then that might inspire you enough to create that engagement, you know, and that intensity in that engagement by thinking, oh, it's not really going to do any good if I'm just kind of a little bit spacey and going into this place that feels good. There's a great story about that, and from the Tibetan collection of scriptures. And there were these traders that were going off to China with their tea or salt or whatever. Like Tibetans are great traders with their yak train, and they're going off to China. And so they went, there was this whole group of traders, and one of them was this great meditator. He went off to meditate one evening. In the morning, he wasn't there. They searched the forest. They couldn't find him at all. They go off on their trip, come back months later, find him still meditating in the forest, and he's been in that zoned out place for like months meditating. And then they sort of bring him out of that meditation, and he's so upset because he realized he's just wasted so much time. Like, even though he could stay in meditation literally for months, you know, is it an apocryphal story? But it's an example, right, of like, he was so upset because he was like, well, this isn't getting me any realizations. This is just this buzzed out bliss. It's like getting high, you know, it doesn't really do any good. So, you know, it's getting that engagement and intensity when you feel that slackness.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're totally welcome. Great. Thank you for asking, because
Yeah.
probably other people will have the same issue. Yeah, good. Any other
Venerable,
questions? Yeah.
there's a couple from the chat.
Yeah.
Carol asks 2 questions. Will you be discussing what words, if any, one might do when breathing in and out? And the second question is also talk about what your mind's eye sees while meditating.
So wait, the first one.
The first one is
again?
what words, if any, might one say to oneself when breathing in and out?
Yeah, so we're not actually, I mean, in that, when we're doing breath awareness practice, it's the sensations of the breath are the object, right? So we're not really adding on any words. There are some meditation practices where we recite mantras. That's kind of different from this. So for this, we're not kind of adding anything else. If we're just doing breath awareness meditation, we're just using the sensations of the breath itself as the object. And what was the second one, Patrick?
What does the mind's eye see while you're meditating?
Yeah, and you don't attend to it. You might have images come up, you might see colors, there might be something going on. Tonight, we're actually going to use an image in the mind's eye and do visualization practice. So in that case, we're giving your mind something to visualize. But if, for example, you're doing breath awareness meditation, you will have, you know, maybe visual images. Just treat them like any other distraction and don't pay attention to them, and just keep returning to the sensations of the breath. But there are techniques, and we'll do one tonight, where we're actually generating a visualization in the mind's eye and using that as the focus of the practice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you for asking.
Paul,
Paul, go ahead.
Should one match the duration of the in and out breath?
No, just very naturally, whatever the duration is. After those 3 deep, long breaths in the beginning that kind of settle that parasympathetic nervous system, then it's just the normal respiration, which can be hard in the beginning because we're not usually conscious of it. And then when we become conscious of it, it might be weird, right? And we might kind of feel like, oh, it's contrived and we have to kind of remember to breathe. But we get used to it after a while, and just whatever that normal respiration. This isn't any kind of pranayama where we're manipulating the breath in any way for this practice. Thank you, Patrick. Dana.
So you talked about in the very beginning that we shouldn't really follow the breath up and down. And so I've been really focused. I used to do that quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, I've been following my lungs opening and closing, but I've noticed that I tend to want to kind of follow it out and in. And I wanted to ask, is that kind of doing the same thing?
You know, I think if you're just, yeah, if you're just localizing at the lungs, I mean, don't add another visual. Really try and just feel the feeling. Like, for example, there was a student once and he was saying, whenever I would lead a body scan, he realized he was just imagining his body. He wasn't really feeling his body. So it's easy for us to use almost something like that, and we're not really feeling it. We're just even imagining the body breathing, or even he said he would take his mind through, but it wasn't really his body that he was taking his mind through. He was just kind of having an image of his body and moving his attention through, but it wasn't really feeling the body. So I think sometimes when we add a visual like that, it may be a way of just separating ourselves from the actual sensation.
Okay, yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Good, good, great. All right. Any other questions before we talk about how to set up? Yeah, Jenny.
I had a question about, actually a friend of mine and I were talking about meditation, and she said, oh, ask Venerable Tenzin about this, which was, she's like, I used to be able to meditate for like an hour, and now after 20 minutes, my legs completely fall asleep. Like, are we just supposed to like push through? You know, is there a thing? And well, she kind of talked about scooting to the back of your cushion. Is
no,
that
front? Front.
Front of the cushion. Can you elaborate? Like,
yeah. So often I found for me when my legs fall asleep, it's when I'm sitting too much on top of the cushion and it's pressing kind of right at the where my hip bones are. Whereas if you scooch forward and then you have the bulk of your cushion just right under the small of your back, then it's not kind of pinching those nerves, and that can be really helpful. Sometimes people in the beginning need more than one cushion. You might need like more elevation at the beginning, or maybe some cushions under your knee too.
right, I remember
But usually for me, you know, and for other people too, the legs falling asleep are due to just being too on top of it, where it's kind of pinching right where your femur kind of is coming out of your pelvis right there. And then it just kind of cuts the nerve off a little bit.
Okay.
So just hanging off, it's almost like hanging off the front. I mean, not in a way that's not stable, but it's like not that you've got the pressure right under the tops of the femur.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. And I've just spilled tea, so I'm gonna.
Oh, all right then. Okay.
Edward from the chat is asking, scratch that itch or not?
Yeah, basically not. It's just your mental restlessness. If you've got poison oak or a really bad mosquito bite, you know, you can, but often your body gets twitchy and it's just sort of a reflection of mental restlessness. So it's better to just let it go. If it seems really overpowering, you can move your attention to what seems like the itch. This part's really interesting, and see if it turns into a sensation and loses its quality as something you feel like you need to deal with. That can be interesting. Like if it's really persistent, you can move your attention there and see what happens, and then come back to the breath. But basically, we're not doing a ton of adjusting. We're just kind of trusting that we'll be okay for 20 minutes without shifting and moving and itching and all of that. Great. All right. So what I wanted to talk about tonight is some tips for establishing a regular meditation practice. We've talked about some of them kind of by the way, but I wanted to give you a couple of lists, which are also in your handout, and just talk about some of the kind of tricks of the trade for setting up, either daily or I suggest at least like 5 times a week is good. Daily sometimes feels like too much pressure and you want to sleep in on Sunday and then you feel guilty and then you go into a whole trip. So don't do that. Don't go into a guilt trip because you're starting a meditation practice. So I usually suggest, 5+ times a day. So I'm going to share my screen again.
A week, right? You meant a week.
5 times a day. Oops. Yeah.
That's fair.
Jenny. Not setting the bar very high at all. 5 times a day, 5 times a week. Yes. Thank you. Don't ask the Buddhist nun to give you meditation advice. All right. So here's some tips to setting up a meditation practice. It's really good. There's nothing like a new habit, and so really think in terms of establishing a new habit, which I've heard from psychologists. I don't know if this is the most recent, but I heard that either breaking an old bad habit or establishing a new good habit basically takes like 28 days. That's less than a month. That's amazing. You can do this. We can all do this, okay? But it is helpful to just commit to the same time every day. And then you notice your body starts to settle and your mind starts to settle just because you've built up a habit. Let's just say it's 7 o'clock in the morning every day. Then you just notice as you go to your meditation place at 7 o'clock, your mind already starts to subdue because you've set up a good habit. And then the same place every day. Really nice, and we're going to be talking about this more next week, really nice to set up a place that's kind of a special place for your meditation. You don't need a whole extra room. It can be a corner of somewhere where you're not going to be disturbed, not around the TV, not around the computer, but just a corner of your house where it feels like you can, be undisturbed. It's kind of nice to set up a special place. We're going to talk a little bit next week about setting up an altar. It doesn't need to be traditional, but it's helpful to have maybe some inspiring pictures of role models or teachers that are meaningful for you. So same time every day, same place every day. I had a friend and he would struggled with setting up a daily practice because he just kind of wander around with his meditation cushion like at random times of day and like throw it down in some corner. And then he was wondering why it wasn't working out. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? So really having that regularity can really help. So doing it every day, or as I said, at least 5 times a week, not 5 times a day. And then a short time period at first. One of the problems that people have, I think, when they start to meditate, they get really excited and enthusiastic, which is awesome, but they just make it too hard in the beginning. They're like, oh, I'm going to meditate for an hour and a half every morning before work. Don't start like that. It's going to be really hard and you're not going to be able to keep it up. We say it's better to do more frequent, short meditation sessions for beginners than it is to set yourself up for a big, long session. So even like 15 minutes or so is great for a beginner. The morning is good when the mind is fresh. The evening for a short time is also okay. And sometimes it's nice in the evening. One of the practices we do sometimes in the evening is just review the day, kind of contemplate a little bit, how did it go? What would I have done differently? Maybe reviewing how we're doing and setting some aspirations. And the morning time, it all depends. It all depends. And we've talked about this before. Some people are just night people and they get their best energy at night. If people have small children they have to take care of in the morning or a lot going on in the morning, morning may not be best. It's often best just because your mind is fresh and you haven't been interacting with a lot of people yet, but it's just up to you. So don't feel like this is a hard and fast rule. Figure out what works for you. Also, not doing it on a full stomach or when you're really tired. Somebody was asking a few weeks ago about having a cup of tea or coffee in the morning before you meditate. And if that, helps you feel energized, I think that's fine. Not good to eat one of those Denny's like full course breakfast before you meditate, or meditate late at night after a big dinner. It's just not going to work. You're going to just be sitting there struggling. So it is helpful to do it, if you're also sitting there starving. Like for me, I kind of need to eat a little something in the morning before I meditate, not too much, just to get my blood sugar going. So again, this is very individual, but not doing it on a full stomach or when you're really tired. So I want to share one more slide, and then we'll have questions. This is some tips for. It's meant especially for meditation retreats, but I wanted to share it with you because if we're going to try to kind of develop more of a contemplative style of life, there are some changes kind of in alignment with this we might want to make in our lives, even just in our daily lives. So I wanted to share this slide, and some of you may be considering doing some kind of meditation retreat. I know that there's some online. In normal times, we have group retreats. And so these are conducive conditions for meditation, especially for either solitary or group retreat. Really important to think of these things. But the reason I'm introducing them now, even though this isn't a course about how to do a retreat, is it's helpful to just keep these in mind. It's like I said, if we're trying to develop a contemplative practice and we're meditating 20 minutes in the morning and nothing else in our life supports a contemplative life, we're not going to make much progress, right? So a lot of people like to implement some changes in their life that just supports their contemplative practice. And so we'll look at some of these. 5 are qualities of the place. And so especially if you're going into a retreat, the things you need should be easy to find: groceries, clothes. You should be warm enough. You should be comfortable. Sometimes, and this is maybe more the kind of days when we used to go to India and, try to be yogis, like meditating in a cave. I had a friend and he actually decided he was going to be a yogi and do a retreat in a cave. And he found a cave, and it was in the desert in Arizona. And he thought he was just so amazing. And he goes into the cave. And then as the sun started to set and it got to be dark, all of these daddy long legs came crawling out of the back of the cave. And he just like freaked out. He had a tent. So he put a tent up inside of the cave. He stayed in his cave. But apparently our teacher, Lama Yeshe, who is the founder of our organization, he's like, don't do the cave thing. Be comfortable, be somewhere that's like safe and comfortable and okay. He's like, you people don't, be in a cave eating weeds. Like, just, be realistic. A safe place, and in the traditional text, it says free of robbers and wild animals. And it's good to be in a place where people won't bother you and disturb you. I remember I started meditating when I was a hippie teenager, and the first thing I did was transcendental meditation. And I was living in my parents' house, and I had a sign I would put on the bedroom door when I was meditating, and they were so respectful. I mean, I give them a lot of props now that I didn't at the time, because if I get a phone call or something, they wouldn't disturb me when I was meditating. So it's helpful to find a place where people aren't going to be bothering you. It's not too hot, not too cold, nothing that will make you sick. I was receiving these teachings from a Tibetan Lama, and he was like, don't go to India. You'll get sick. Dharamsala up in the mountains where a lot of the Tibetans live is like freezing in the wintertime, really, really hot in the summertime. He's like, don't go there. A good support staff, people who understand what you're doing and are really supportive. And again, even if you aren't in a retreat where people are bringing you what you need and bringing you food, it's nice to have supportive friends if you're trying to develop a contemplative life. It's really, really hard if your friends kind of diss what you're doing, you know, and you're trying to get interested in spiritual practice and they're not really understanding and supportive. So again, some of these factors, I think we can think about them just in our daily life as well. So a quiet place, no interruptions from other people, no phones and so forth, even natural sounds like water. And again, this is for a meditation retreat. There's this famous story of Joseph Goldstein, an insight meditator, and he went to a cabin in the woods. And he was so charmed because right outside of the cabin was just this mountain stream. And he thought, oh my God, it was going to be so charming to be there. And then he said he spent most of the break times of his meditation sessions rearranging the rocks in the stream so they make a different sound. So waves are like that too. You think you're going to do a meditation retreat at a beach house, but it's just, you know, the waves can be so distracting after a while. So for meditation, a good meditation place. Somebody had a question in the very beginning about sound. I remember somebody had a question and I was saying, I had a friend who lived in a really busy, noisy neighborhood in San Francisco, and she would wear like lawnmower canceling headphones. And that's a possibility too. If you can't control the external environment, you can just wear earplugs or those kind of headphones. So those are the qualities of the place. And then again, meant for retreat, but I think interesting for us to keep in mind, reducing your needs and wants to as few as possible. And satisfaction and contentment, satisfaction with what is provided for you. I was in a long meditation retreat in one place and there were caretakers, and we would make a food list once every couple of weeks to give to the caretakers. And one of the things when you're meditating a lot, and one of the only distractions is meals, you can get so into it. And I remember at a certain point, I'm like planning out these like amazing things that I wanted to cook. And then I realized, oh my gosh, this is such a distraction. So for my food list, I would just say fruits, vegetables like tofu, and just accept whatever it was they got for me. And sometimes it wasn't my favorite thing. And I would just say, you just choose and I'll be content with what I get. And it really helped my meditation a lot. You know, so if we're in a retreat center and, you know, we're not so happy with the food, just having that contented, satisfied mind and not having a mind that just really wants a lot of stuff. One thing about going into retreat, not bringing in a bunch of projects to do if you're really going to be focusing on meditation. And this is one of the things that I think if we're trying to develop a more kind of contemplative lifestyle, just not being so busy, not having so much going on. You know, we need to kind of create the space to go inward. And if we just have so many projects and so much stuff going on all the time, it's really kind of hard to create that space in our minds. Also, pure ethics, if you want to meditate well, if you got some kind of Buddhist vows, keeping your vows, or at least avoiding the 10 non-virtues. One of the things that is a phrase that's found in some of the Buddhist scriptures is the bliss of blamelessness. And so if you're doing things that you really regret, your mind is not going to be able to focus. If you're going around doing things that are harmful, you know, there's just no way you're going to develop a good meditation practice. So living in a way that is in accordance with ethics of non-harming and the avoiding the 10 non-virtues really, really helps your mind focus. Giving up the objects of the senses, not having a lot of other thoughts and sense distractions like internet, videos, food, other sense pleasures. Again, really important if you're going to be trying to do a meditation retreat, but this is one of the things that we might want to look at for kind of setting up a lifestyle that's conducive for focusing on our spiritual practice or a more contemplative life. So that's why I wanted to introduce these to you. Again, they're kind of a list that is designed for meditation retreat, which some of you might, embark on at some point, but also really, really helps us kind of make some choices about our life to set up for supporting our practice. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's any questions or comments about those lists and about how to set up a practice before we do our practice.
Venerable, I think I know the answer to this, but is, the shortening the meditation time so that you're more likely to do it helped me, but I was doing like 5 minutes in the morning. Is that too short?
I wouldn't say anything is too short. One thing that some people find helpful, I'm so glad you asked this question, is dividing, like even if you've got half an hour, dividing it into little mini sessions. So you're not like, even if you do, 3 or 4 5-minute sessions, you don't take a huge break in between, get up and make a cup of tea, but just relax your mind, then go back, relax your mind, then go back. So take like a minute break to just relax your mind from the object and then go back is better than sitting for half an hour. So it might be interesting to explore, even if you start with 5 minutes in the morning, and then you might feel after a while that you are inspired to do another 5-minute session and then maybe add on a little bit more. And that's better for your mind than starting with a lot and then kind of feeling like you can't do it. So if 5 minutes works for you, then just kind of investigate. Maybe after a while, you might want to add on another, without getting up, just relax your mind and then just sit for 5 more minutes. It's kind of like, the recommendation is you should never get off your meditation cushion just completely fed up. You should get off when you're still having a good time. It was like when I was younger, we had this thing that you always left a party while you're still having fun. You didn't like just wait until you're having a really bad time. You left while you were still having a good time. It's kind of the same for meditation, because we want the imprint on our mind of like, oh, that was something pleasant to do, instead of just looking at your meditation cushion going, oh my God, torture, right? So much better to do the shorter time period.
My issue is that I have a lot of things that I like to do in the morning before I go to work. And so carving out that extra time in the morning to do something else that I want to do is a little bit trickier. So I think for me, it's helpful to start off with that smaller amount. And like you said, sometimes I feel more motivated to sit a little bit longer.
Yeah. And then it may be that you're like, oh, I'll get up a little bit earlier, like go to bed a little earlier and get up a little earlier because this is cool and I want to do more of this, and that's kind of how. But yeah, I think just adding when you're really inspired to, rather than starting too big. I have a friend, and his girlfriend always calls me and it was like, will you talk to him? Because he'll go to a teaching, get all inspired, and then he's like, I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and meditate for 3 hours before I go to work. And then he does that for like 4 days. And then he just takes down his altar and puts it in the closet. And he's like, no, I can't do it anymore. And then she's like, can you please come talk to him? And I'm like, could you just like take it easy and not go to these like huge extremes? So yeah. Good. Thank you. There was somebody else had unmuted. Any other comments or questions on that?
Hi, Tenzin, this is Carol. I sent a text as well, but you can disregard it. This has more to do with time. Is there a particular amount of time to sit and meditate that we're aiming for? 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? Is there a goal, or is it more the intent and how you feel? I'm just wondering if there's some parameters that I should shoot for.
Yeah, and I think it depends a little bit on, like, as you learn more practices, because we've just had a little bit of time during this kind of 6 weeks and we're not quite done yet to introduce you to some practices, but you might investigate some of the suggested readings and maybe take more classes and investigate and kind of find more practices. Sometimes people choose to do a little bit of settling, focusing, single pointed concentration meditation, maybe 10 minutes of that a day, and then maybe something like a compassion practice or a visualization. So sometimes when people get used to the different techniques, they'll put together a morning practice with a couple of different components, and then maybe they'll need half an hour for the different sections that they'll put together as part of their morning practice. So that's very individual too. But again, I think using, like I was just saying to Dana, using your individual, time frame of what still feels enjoyable for you and not pushing for a lot. And for some people, an hour eventually is great, and they really want to kind of maintain like an hour a day. So it's so individual, but I think as you learn more, it may be that you want to do a couple of different practices as part of your morning practice, and then that, takes a little bit of time to kind of manage all of those. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, good.
So how long before we hit enlightenment? Like about how many days?
Next Tuesday. Yeah. Right before the end of class. Didn't you ask for that? I mean, I thought that was your request, right? Enlightenment by the end of class. All right.
There's a couple from the chat. Venerable Tor and Linda are asking, oh, that was privately. They asked what the 10 non-virtues are. But
oh, okay.
Do you want to go through that, or I can look for a list and post it or something?
Maybe if you look for a list and post it, that would be great. Is that okay, Linda? Yeah. Because that's kind of a whole other teaching. But yeah, if you find something, and we're going to take a break before we meditate. Was there anything else?
There is. Carrie's wondering if you can recommend an app on the phone for meditation.
I don't know that much. I don't use apps myself. I don't know if anybody else who's studied for a while uses apps. And I should figure out what good ones are, because I just don't meditate like that. Oh, somebody's putting calm.com. Anybody use apps that you'd recommend? Insight Timer, says Matthew. Insight Timer, says Jenny.
There's
Insight
things you can
Timer's
do
good.
you can make it like tell your computer to tell you to stop and things like that, timing. Those can be helpful. I do those with work, and I know to like stand up. So you could, if you meditate after like 2 hours of work, it'll say like ding, 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 it's time, because some of us need that. That's kind of helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, and I see that Insight Timer is getting a lot of votes. A friend of mine, and I've never used it, so I can't really recommend it, but a friend of mine uses Headspace, and I don't know if anybody's had experience with Headspace. That's what he uses on a daily basis. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know that much about
I've
that.
used that one before. I don't remember anything about it because I didn't use it very much, but it was one of the ones that was out early as well. So it was, yeah, I mean, I would check that out.
I'm old and old-fashioned, so I just meditate using my head instead of an app. So sorry, I can't respond. All right, we're going to do a practice, but let's take a 3-minute bio break and then come back, and then we're going to do a visualization practice that I'll guide you through. So see you in 3 minutes, and I'll ring a bell to bring us back. Okay. So what we're going to do is a visualization practice, and this will kind of prep us a little bit for the final practice that I'm going to introduce you to next week. We're going to have kind of an integrated practice that's more of a traditional Buddhist, practice that we can do for setting up for a daily practice with some preliminary steps that kind of prepare our minds. So the practice we do tonight will prepare you a little bit for that. And what this practice is, it's a purification practice where we'll visualize an enlightened being or awakened being or saint. You can pick whoever you want. You can pick the Buddha, you can pick another Buddha figure, or if there's a saint or leader of a different religious tradition that you'd like to visualize, we'll imagine that being seated in front of us. And the point of the visualization is just to imagine a being that you think embodies all of these kind of enlightened or awakened qualities: incredible compassion, incredible kindness, incredible wisdom, courage, all positive qualities. And so then what we're going to do is imagine an energy exchange with that being. And we do this a lot in Tibetan Buddhist practice. We do a lot with visualizations of different Buddha figures, imagining that we're able to use the energy of that enlightened being to kind of catalyze those same qualities within ourselves, and then purify ourselves of whatever might be hindering those positive qualities. And so we do it by way of visualization. It can be very powerful to do. Sometimes we might think, oh, I'm just doing a visualization. It's just pretend, it's all in my mind. But there's a lot of research being shown now that visualization can be very, very powerful. A lot of people are doing visualization practices, for example, if they have cancer, and visualizing the tumor shrinking and then having good results. So the mind is very powerful. And that's what we're kind of tapping into with this practice. So I'll guide you through. We'll be visualizing several things I'll guide you through, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. And then again, we're going to be building on this next week for this kind of more integrated final practice that we'll do, that might be something that you'd like to consider using for your daily meditation practice. So I'll talk more about that near the end of the session. So go ahead and get into your meditation posture with your back straight, your head tilted slightly forward, that hooded gaze, your shoulders even, your hands in your lap or resting on your knees, that nice stable posture. And then after settling in, we won't do a full body scan, but take a moment to just sweep through your body, scan through your body, and relax any tightness or tension that might have crept in. And then just settling your mind with just a few moments of breath awareness, meditation. And so now visualize in the space in front of you, and this will just be an image in your mind's eye, but imagining a figure in the space in front of you. And you can imagine the Buddha, the historical Buddha, or another Buddha figure, if you're familiar with a figure like Guan Yin or Tara or Chenrezig or another Buddha figure. You can also visualize an image of your choice, something that you're comfortable with, and that might be that there's another spiritual figure that you relate to, maybe Saint Francis or Mother Mary or some other saint or spiritual figure. Or if it's hard to think of an actual person, Buddha figure, saint, holy being, you can also visualize a sphere of light or another image of your choice, whatever you feel comfortable with. And the point is that this image, whether it's the Buddha, another saint, or something like a ball of light, symbolizes all the positive energy and positive qualities in the world, symbolizes compassion, loving kindness, wisdom, courage, and so forth. So take a moment to just set up that visualization of that figure or that image. And now visualize a bright light flowing from the heart of the Buddha or the center of the image that you've visualized. And imagine that the essence of this light is great compassion, the mind that understands the suffering of all beings and wishes them to be free of their suffering. And so as you inhale, imagine breathing in this blissful, radiant light, and it fills your whole body and mind with great compassion. You'll continue breathing in that light of great compassion and keep your mind in that state, in that feeling of great compassion for every living being without exception, feeling their suffering, wishing them to be free from all sufferings and problems. And continue breathing in that light of great compassion. And now also, as you exhale, imagine sending out anything that would hinder that great compassion, delusions, especially self-absorption, negativities. And imagine that you exhale in the form of smoke, which just disappears the moment it's out of your body. So breathing in that brilliant light of great compassion, breathing out anything that would be an obstacle or hindrance to the expansion of that compassion, to the development of that compassion, especially selfishness, self-absorption, maybe fear, whatever you think stands in the way. And imagining again that bright light flowing from the heart of the Buddha or your visualized image. And this time its essence is wisdom, the fully awakened, omniscient mind, that mind that sees things the way they really are. And as you breathe in, imagine your whole body and mind are filled with this wisdom of the enlightened beings, that omniscient mind, that all-knowing mind, really seeing the nature of reality the way that it is. With each inhale, your whole body and mind suffused with wisdom. And continue breathing in that bright light. And now as you exhale in the form of the smoke, delusions and defilements, particularly ignorance. Ignorance about the way things exist in the form of smoke that just disappears. So continue breathing in that bright light of wisdom, breathing out ignorance and delusions and anything that would stand in the way of the development of that wisdom. And then next, still visualizing that white light flowing from the heart of the Buddha or your visualized image. And this time, the essence of that bright light is power and ability. This is the power to be able to help everyone become free of all their problems. Thinking this thought is the highest thought. Wishing to free all beings from their sufferings and the causes of suffering, delusions, and karma, and to give them all happiness, all the way up to full awakening. So as you inhale this bright light, which fills your whole body and mind with the nature of that ability to be able to work perfectly for all beings, just like the Buddha. And as you exhale, imagining all of the delusions, especially lack of confidence, low self-esteem, anything that would prevent you from really being able to manifest that confidence, that ability, that power to benefit others, whatever it might be. Imagine that it leaves your body in the form of smoke and completely disappears. So continue breathing in that bright light of ability, power, and breathing out any obstacles to that capacity, that ability. And then just spend another few moments imagining again that figure, that being or that image that you visualized, and thinking of any other qualities that they have that you'd love to manifest in yourself. Maybe it's courage, maybe it's kindness. And just taking a few moments to imagine breathing in that bright light from the heart of that figure, of all of those other awakened qualities, and exhaling any obstacles, delusions, defilements, any remaining obstacles to the manifestation of that quality, those qualities. And then you can release the visualization and just take a few moments to feel the confidence that you've awakened all of those qualities within yourself, that compassion, that wisdom, that power and ability, all those other qualities. And just take a moment to just feel that in your body. And then let's dedicate the positive energy from this practice. At this point, we've just manifested these qualities at the level of our imagination by doing this visualization. But we say we've created powerful causes by doing this visualization of these qualities for actually being able to manifest them ourselves. So taking a moment to just dedicate the positive energy of this practice towards the goal of awakening all of those qualities that are latent inside of you for the benefit of all beings. Any questions about that visualization? So this was giving your mind something to visualize. It's sort of combination of concepts, thinking of these qualities, these Buddha qualities, and then combined with the visualization and kind of coupling the visualization with the breath. So there's quite a lot going on there, but this can be one of those transformative techniques that we can use. So any questions?
There's a couple from the chat.
Okay.
Before the meditation, Dev had asked, he says, someone mentioned that their body temp goes up during meditation. Is that normal?
You know, it does happen. It doesn't happen for everyone, but those kind of fluctuations in body temperature, sometimes people find them, especially at the beginning. Sometimes it's just because they're focusing a little bit and it's, you know, getting a little bit activated, and then it might change with some practice. But yeah, it's nothing to either worry about or worry if it doesn't happen or think that it should happen. It's just kind of one of those individual differences. Yeah.
Edward wants to know whether when you're visualizing, does that change whether your eyes are open or hooded? Does that affect that?
Yeah, so we're still having that hooded gaze. And when we have the hooded gaze, we're not focusing on what's in front of us. And we're just focusing, when we're doing a visualization, on what's in our mind's eye, right? So whether our eyes are open or shut, we're just creating an image in our mind's eye. So even if our eyes are a little bit open and hooded, it's kind of like you can be staring off into space daydreaming, right? And even though your eyes are totally open, your energy is completely withdrawn inside your head to whatever you're daydreaming about or whatever images. It's kind of the same, except we're doing it willfully, creating an image in our heads. Yeah.
And Paul was asking, is this pretty close to Tonglen?
It's a little bit like self-Tonglen using a Buddha figure, for those of you who know what Tonglen is. With Tonglen, we're reversing it and trying to take on from others all of their suffering and give them all of our happiness. So is a little bit flipped. In this one, we're having the Buddha figure giving us all the positive qualities, and then we're breathing out the negativity. So it's kind of 180 degrees opposite from Tonglen.
That's it for questions.
Okay, great.
On the chat.
You. Thank you. Anybody else have something live you want to ask? All right. So next week for our final class, goodness me, grand finale, I wanted to introduce you to a quite traditional Buddhist practice that, again, you might or might not find interesting, but I thought it would be helpful to really introduce kind of a framework for how a traditional Buddhist practitioner would set up a daily practice. And I'm going to share my screen again because unusually I'm going to give you a little bit of homework this time. Don't usually give you homework. But it would be helpful if you could look ahead of time at the handout that you already have. There's a section called the Daily Meditation Session that we're going to be discussing next week. And in that section, there are these preliminary practices that we suggest doing to really set your mind up for a good meditation session. Usually what we do in Buddhist practice isn't kind of plop down on the cushion and just launch right into the visualization or the breath awareness or the compassion or whatever it is. We kind of prepare our mind with certain preliminaries. And so I want to go through that. And again, it's very, very traditional Buddhist practice, but you might want, be able to alter them a little bit for, what kind of seems appropriate for you. So we're going to be looking at that, pages 7 and 8 of the handout. And then Patrick sent you yesterday a PDF of a daily practice. We're going to be going through that and doing that together next week. I'm going to be explaining every section of that on the basis of the daily meditation sessions. So you'll see how those two go together. And I'm just thinking, if you have a chance to take a look before next week's session and familiarize yourself a little bit with both the different points of the daily meditation session and then that daily practice. The PDF that came out yesterday, the first page is a seated Buddha figure, like a colored picture of a Buddha figure, and then there's certain meditation instructions following that. So if you have a chance to take a look at all of that before next week, that would be super helpful. And then we'll go through it. And then hopefully after we do that practice, we'll have time for any kind of final questions and where to go from here. Like I was saying, there's so many different meditation practices that we do. One of the things that I was attracted to actually in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition when I started was all of the different techniques. And we just had a chance to kind of sample a little bit of a potpourri. But I put in the recommended readings a couple of books and different resources that you can dig deeper. Also at Land of Medicine Buddha, every Sunday morning and every Monday night, now it's online, guided meditation sessions. And so might be helpful if you'd like to learn some more techniques or just get more practice to kind of join into those practices as well. All right. Patrick, do you have anything to
Sure.
announce?
I did one of the meditations on Sunday morning and Monday evening during the shutdown are taking place on Facebook, so you can find us there. Also, this weekend on Saturday, Venerable Tenzin Chogkyi and Sunil Joseph are returning to teach online, of course, although they're going to be together teaching in person, social distancing, but we're going to try that. That's cultivating compassion in turbulent times. So obviously, I think they're bringing in generating compassion for people with different views, which we're all experiencing now. That's 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, and I'll post the registration on the chat.
Great.
That's it for
me. Patrick. Great. Thank you. Thank you all. And I'll see you next Wednesday for our last class. Thank you for coming to join. Have a great week. And I'll see you all soon.
Thank you,
If you
Venerable.
want to
Bye, everybody.
unmute, say goodbye to your friends.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, friends.
Bye.
Bye.